Hey everybody, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. In today's video, we have a story about a dungeon master that incorporates monster girls into his Dungeons & Dragons game to the point that it ruins a player's character. A story about a game master for a cyberpunk game that railroads his players, and much more. But first, how about a little throwback to when Lucky was the like and comment kitten? He was so tiny back then. But now, I think we are ready for some DnD horror stories. Horny magic completely changed my character. I'm fuming over it. By Reddit user FeelingZombie4489. This is just a vent, and I'm feeling pretty frustrated. In our last session, I was going to go off on a small mission with a couple other party members, while the rest hung back and rested or crafted. Our artificer lent me his automaton, just in case we needed extra support. My character, a druid with respect for allies and life in general, asked what the robot's name was, as to address her properly. 01, the artificer said. I replied and said that feels wrong, and that she deserves a name for all the help she's been on our travels. He gave me the okay to name her, and once the cleric and I decided on Eve, I spoke her name to her, and the automaton bit me. Wait, a robot that bites? See what I did there? What I was not aware of was the fact that the automaton is a Mamanu creature from the Monster Girl Encyclopedia, which I'm not really a fan of in the campaign, but it's ultimately up to the dungeon master. Monster Girl what? I was then infected with said Mamanu magic, failed a constitution save, and I completely transformed. I was a furbolg, but the Mamanu, which is essentially horny magic, completely altered my character. I am now a dryad from said Monster Girl Encyclopedia. I'm basically a slim thick tree lady, which I don't really mind. The part I do mind, however, is the fact that my character cannot control herself around males that she is even slightly attracted to, and quite literally pounces on them the moment she sees them. She now infects the males with this Mamanu, which pumps them full of pheromones and does the diddly deed of procreating, and no one can do anything to stop her, not even me. Oh great, so not only did the dungeon master turn OP's character into a horny tree creature, but has also taken away player agency as well. So of course, an attractive, per the dungeon master, vampire walks into the room shortly after I was bitten, and my character immediately mates with him and becomes pregnant. My baby was wished away by our genie sorcerer, bless his heart. What even is this game? I do not want this at all. I don't want to be a killjoy, but it was rather uncomfortable for me to sit there in front of my group while the dungeon master is laying out the scene of me viciously going to town on this vampire. Beforehand, my character was a virgin for background reasons, and I had intended for her to stay that way so that she may dedicate her life to restore the balance of the world. I think I'm extra butthurt about it because I'm so attached to the character that I made, and how much I've built her up over the last year. She's a level 12 druid and level 6 monk for reference. Not to mention, the cleric was also infected, because apparently I want to infect females with this magic and transform them too. And it's out of my control, since the Mamanu apparently takes full control, like raging pheromones. I'm so upset, and I'm ready to burn my character sheet and just make a new character that is a menace and an a-hole, just to spite the DM. Now, that would be the wrong move. I always say that it's best to solve in-game issues out of game. Doing that would make OP part of this horror story as well. I'm not really sure how to address this, because the rest of the party, aside from me and the cleric, seemed to be okay with it. Well, of course they were. It wasn't their characters that were affected. I don't want to be a buzzkill, but I just really disagree with the fact that there was no consent on my part to make this transformation. And the physical part I don't mind at all. I like the idea of being a cool tree creature, but the other part I don't like. What do y'all think? Edit. I knew that this magic existed in our world, and we've even come across a portal to this Mamano dimension, but I did not know that I could be infected and transformed this way. I didn't really want to kill the fun, but now my fun has been killed. Edit 2. We did not have a Session 0. This is the first campaign for a lot of the players involved, myself included, and I didn't even know what a Session 0 was until I joined this sub. Dungeon Master really isn't a bad guy, otherwise we wouldn't be associated. He's just not great at communicating, and I feel like he didn't think to talk about this stuff beforehand because he grew up in a very sex-positive household and doesn't realize that not everyone is comfortable with it the way he is. Edit 3. A lot of y'all are accusing the DM of being a rapist or creepy, when that isn't the case. Can he be pervy? Sure, but he's never made me feel threatened or unsafe. I also don't believe him to be pushing his fetishes onto us, as we've been friends for a while, and he hasn't done anything to make me uncomfortable up until this one incident in the campaign. So please, stop accusing him of these terrible things, because he's not a terrible person and wouldn't do that. I genuinely believe that he just wasn't aware of how uncomfortable this might make someone, and I myself have a hard time setting these boundaries. It makes me sad to see that so many people are quick to make these harsh assumptions about someone that they don't know. And if I'm being honest, he's staying true to the source material that he drew all this from. I just found myself wishing that it wasn't part of the campaign, or that we had talked about it and set boundaries before this all happened. Truthfully, I would trust this guy to protect me from the kind of monster some of y'all seem to think he is. I appreciate the input and insight, but I'd appreciate it if you could chill out with the accusations. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, even though OP doesn't think so, I am pretty sure that monster girls are a type of fetish some people have, and for the Dungeon Master to include an encyclopedia of them into the game, it kinda gives me the vibe that that is the case here, but I could be completely wrong. The main problem with this is the fact that the Dungeon Master never discussed the possibilities of these monster girls being able to transform other people into them, and then to spring it up on OP and Cleric via being bitten by a robot, which still makes me scratch my head, is kind of unfair to the players. Then there's the fact that said monster girl OP's character transformed into basically had no agency when it came to essentially SAing people. There are just so many red flags in this game that I kinda lost count, and if this does bother OP, I'd tell them not to stay quiet about it and speak to the Dungeon Master about why it's making the game not fun for them. If the Dungeon Master is the stand-up guy that OP painted them to be in the third edit to the story, then he should have no issue retconning what happened, or at least taking away the part that takes away OP's player agency with their character. So communication is the solution here, in my opinion. Though, what are your thoughts on this story? I am legit curious. Let's move on to the next one. Other player kept making fun of me the moment they found out that I go to a church. By Reddit user Imaginary Goose 3251. I am not really religious, but my family is. My parents and grandparents go to church every Sunday, and I have gone with them since I can remember. It's sort of been part of the routine for me. Even now that I don't live with my parents, I still go to their church every Sunday, as it's a way for me to meet them in person every week and have breakfast with them afterwards. I've been part of an online game for a few months now, and we played every Saturday evening. A few weeks ago, one of the players was busy on Saturday, so he asked to shift the game to Sunday. I said that I have to go to church in the morning, but any time in the evening should be fine. Another player, Jane, thought I was joking at first, until I swore that I went to church on Sunday. After that, however, every joke she made started to change. I would not have minded that much if she had kept the jokes in game, but she kept asking me stuff, like how I feel about there being other gods in the game, and then how I feel about Catholic priests essaying kids, and how I feel about homophobia, etc. in church, and whatever stuff the church has done. She just randomly, in the middle of the game, would ask me such stuff and act as if this was some clever joke, and expect me to keep defending stuff. I just stopped enjoying the game within a few weeks of this, and told the dungeon master that I won't be playing in the game anymore. Well, that is just kind of sad. OP shouldn't have had to leave a game over being bullied by Jane for going to church. I mean, if it was just one offhand comment, OP might have just brushed it off. But it sounded like Jane just kept digging and digging, to the point that OP just couldn't enjoy the game anymore. And I'd say that the Dungeon Master is partially to blame here too, as they should have put a stop to it, as it was targeting OP. And I'm sure it derailed the game every time she did this. I mean, I'm a Christian myself, and I will admit, there are people that will use their religion as a reason to be bigoted and nasty, but not every Christian is all fire and brimstone, and often miss the point of the gospel of Christianity. Myself and all the Christians I know are open-minded and very accepting of everyone. Plus, it has helped bring a little comfort to me in this last year, with me developing severe tinnitus in my left ear, and my dad getting rapid mouth cancer, and has helped me come out of some very dark places. People always want to pick and choose the bad things of just about anything, but always ignore the good that can come from it. And it sounded like Jane was one of those people, and just couldn't let the fact that OP goes to church go, even though OP stated that he's not really religious. Hopefully, OP can find another game where he won't get piled on for something like that. Let's move on. The worst case of railroading I've ever seen, by Reddit user ThatWaterAmerican. We were playing a cyberpunk game where a drug gang themed to the Wizard of Oz had taken over an abandoned nightclub. These guys weren't wearing costumes. They had undergone exotic body sculpting surgery. So the Tin Men look as they do in the movie, and the Scarecrows are lanky and wearing old clothes and burlap. Our team wanted to sneak past them, as there were almost 20 gangsters, all dressed the same, and they were all confused and high on their own supply, with some smashing their heads against the wall. Plus, our real prize was in the nightclub's basement. Our team's journalist asked if he could do an internet search to learn more about the Wizard of Oz. Game Master agrees, and the journalist rolled very high on a library check. The Game Master says, "You don't know what the Wizard of Oz is, so you can't look it up." The journalist says that he'll look for, quote, Tin Man and Scarecrow, because many cyberpunk booster gangs are basically cosplayers with guns. Someone even floats the idea of dressing up as Dorothy, but the Game Master says that we don't know what that is. The Game Master clarifies that the Wizard of Oz exists, but the movie is 105 years old at this point, and doesn't show up in any resources. The journalist offers to go to a physical library and roll again, but the Game Master says no, which is wild because how did the gang learn about them? Regardless, the party recognizes that everyone in the gang is either scarecrows or tin men. They ask to look for a costume store where they can get outfits that look like the characters. Game Master reiterates that they aren't wearing costumes. They had surgery to look like this. He also says there is no costume shop or party store anywhere in Night City. Stores only carry brand new cyberpunk clothes because of supply chain issues. We ask if there's a community theater or even a high school with a drama department, because they would have a costume and makeup shop. The Game Master relents and says that we can go to one of the theaters. It's closed and locked up. We ask about breaking in, and the Game Master says, "You start to pick the locks, but you realize it's extremely unlikely that they will have the costumes that fit a 105-year-old movie, and you decide not to." We confirmed the scarecrows underwent surgery, but clarify that they are physically wearing burlap and old flannel. We explain to the Game Master that if they found enough for 20 people, it should not be hard for us to find it. One of the booster gangs is literally dressed like clowns. There must be a thrift store, or a gardening supply store, or something where they go to get their clothes, but the Game Master says no. As players, we got frustrated because we didn't want an all-out fight, and we said this to the Game Master directly. It felt like our role-playing options were evaporating, so we just F around a little bit. We collectively float getting sci-fi body sculpting surgery, since rules-wise, it is low cost and can be done in an afternoon. We could just pay the same price to get changed back to our original form when we're done. The Game Master blew up at the idea of everyone getting exotic body modification surgery and took the reins. He said, "Here's how this is going to work. You go back to the nightclub. There are 5 guys at the front door. There are 2 guys at the back door. What do you do?" From there, we played the rest of the scenario, quote, as intended. Meaning we killed everyone over a 3-hour combat encounter, and then our characters needed a week to recover from their injuries. Yeah, it certainly sounds like the Game Master was railroading pretty hard there. I mean, even though the Wizard of Oz would be over a century old at that point, you would think that it is ingrained in the cultural zeitgeist enough that even if people never seen it, they would still know what it was. I mean, Beethoven is centuries old now, but people still know of him and likely heard his music. But let's just say that the party wouldn't have a clue of what the Wizard of Oz is. The journalist of the party, looking up tin men and scarecrows, should have brought up the Wizard of Oz in the internet search he did. It just feels like the Game Master kept throwing roadblock after roadblock at the party, until he got frustrated and just told the party what the characters were doing. The Game Master probably had the whole fight set up, and just didn't want the players to completely bypass it, so just kept saying that nothing worked. Hopefully, this is the only time the Game Master does this to the players, and if it does happen again, I would say something about it. On to the next one. That guy brings the worst character ever, then is surprised when no one wants him in the game. By Reddit user Teddysaurus1. So this is my first post here, and it's a bit of a rant or vent. I recently started a Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign for a few friends I had, and a new player. Everything seemed fine, and we were discussing character concepts for a bit, deciding what everyone would play at Session 0. That guy decided he'd play a Magus, and I will be referring to them as such from now on. And at character creation, he already gave me red flags when he started threatening a player with in-game PvP over just a character concept. When I said that no PvP is allowed, and we can talk it out here why the character is not suitable, they sulked and complained that it'd be more interesting to, quote, solve in-game. Now, personally, I don't mind some party drama, but I didn't want the entire game to devolve into the party constantly trying to kill each other, and neither did the other player, who just decided to rework his entire concept and settled for a fighter. Well, that is kind of BS. I would have told that guy to cut it out and let that player play what he wanted to play. But that's just me. I get a short backstory from everyone but Magus, who just describes their character as a, quote, demon hunter, and just leaves the whole thing there. Game day rolls around, and we do the whole character introduction thing. Everyone is describing their characters and interacting with each other, except, you guessed it, Magus, who is sitting alone in the corner and, quote, refuses to talk to the party because they don't trust them and would rather meditate instead. So, we're going with the loner edgy that guy flavor today. The party starts exploring the place. They aren't sure where they are or what's going on, so they look around and find an NPC. The fighter and new player, Bard, start conversing with the NPCs and having fun, when suddenly, Magus yells, "I run over there and shut the door between them and the NPCs." This was red flag 3 at this point, and I'm getting annoyed. To annoy me further, they start moving their token around the virtual tabletop, looking around corners while the conversation is going around. So I'm forced to pause the game and kindly ask him to not open the doors and wander around without telling me, since I can't describe 2 scenes at once. This culminates into Magus smugly asking me every time, "Oh, may I open the door? May I walk in this direction?" Even during combat, which only aggravates me further. They push further into the dungeon and eventually meet a friendly NPC. Magus immediately distrusts them, robs the NPC, and when the NPC complains about it, yells slurs at them and says, "I want to kill him." The rest of the party says, "No, you can't. We will not let you." Upon which, he smugly replies, "Tut tut, Game Master said no PvP, so you can't stop me." I obviously don't let this happen, and just put a blanket ban on him killing the NPC that everyone else wants to live. Fighter has an in-character conversation with them, trying to be their friend, but ends up being mocked by the Magus, as he says, "You are a weak, pathetic fool who wastes time burying corpses and will die for trusting the wrong people. Also, I don't need to worry about morality because I'm strong," which makes me cringe to the edge of my spine. We end the session not long after. I thank everyone for the game and leave. The other players have noticed that I'm aggravated and ask me if I'm fine, upon which I realize that I'm not. I try to have a conversation with Magus and explain why this wasn't okay, but I just get called an idiot who can't differentiate between in-character and out-of-character. After that conversation, I told them that they weren't welcome anymore and blocked them. I'm still wondering what they were thinking, acting like that. Yeah, I'd say Magus was pretty brazen with all that crap. Immediately being aggressive to other players, moving his token on the virtual tabletop to see what the dungeon master might have hidden, and basically being a murder hobo towards the NPCs they came across. Then, he had the balls to insult OP when they confronted him about these issues. I don't blame OP for booting him one bit. I mean, what did Magus expect to happen after that? I swear, some people just don't have any self-awareness, I guess. Hopefully, OP's game is still going strong with their remaining players. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.